That the other one that that was mentioned was what Los Angeles Thieves were going to do, because Nade reckons that, you know, Mudog, he lets Mudog kind of do his job as the general manager, but he also throws out some suggestions and tries to challenge his thought process and whether he's making good decisions. And he said, look, at the end of the day, this is something that I thought might happen, honestly, because Crimsix and Envoy were both made free agents at the same time. And Envoy went on to reveal that actually he found out that he was getting dropped by Crimsix, because Crim found out that he was getting dropped. And he told Envoy that Crim was getting dropped, and basically because it was due to this merger, and therefore he was like, well, Envoy, you might be getting dropped because this merger's happening. And then Envoy gets the call from HECZ to say, meeting at the HECZ quarters, and then Envoy's like, okay, I know what the drill is here. So that when that was all going on, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe Envoy and Crim could be a duo. And apparently Nadeshot was thinking, okay, could we bring Crim to Los Angeles Thieves? Now, again, the fact of the matter is, from my perspective, let's say it was Envoy, Kenny, Crimsix, it would have to be Octane as the fourth. And like, again, it's another classic combo of Crim and Octane that aren't necessarily the best of friends, maybe, in the pro scene. At least based on things that have been said in the past. Also, that would mean Kenny would be forced onto the SMG, Draz would be out of there. Unless maybe they never got Octane anyway and they kept Draz there. And it was like Crim as the main, Kenny, Flex, Draz, Envoy subs. I don't know, like maybe Crim instead of Octane. I'm not sure what they were even thinking there. But I think Octane was coming anyway, to be honest. And I don't think there's any world in which Crim and Octane could get along amicably for an entire year. But yeah, maybe just something that was considered and then quite quickly rejected. But still, Crim to Thieves was at least on the cards, because when Crim's a free agent, you got to think about these moves, kind of like how they did with Hook.
Yeah, but obviously the Hook one did not go extremely well.
Yeah,
I think the one thing with Nadeshot is that because he's not totally in the scene anymore, he kind of just has the knowledge bank from when he was a player. And so he'll bring up players like Hook and Crimsix that he played with and played against. And it's like, you know, I don't really see Crim and LA with that roster being overly successful. I think they would have a really good foundation, and Crim's knowledge is probably still the highest in the game, and he is the most successful player ever. So that you can't go wrong there. But just talent-wise, to compete with a team like FaZe or Toronto, I don't think that brings the full package. I think Crim needs to have, just like Clay, some really, really fiery young players around them that he can lead and can send in first. Like, imagine Crim playing with Simp and abezy. I feel like that would be complete domination, even more so than now. And I think him in that sort of setting is perfect. Like, if he went to FaZe now, I think they'll be more dominant than they are.
Wow.
Do you get me?
I mean, yeah, that's quite the statement, actually. I wonder, I mean, it's very tough to say that FaZe would be more dominant than they were last year with Crim instead of Arcetes, I guess, if that's the trade that we're thinking of making.
But, yeah, if you make that trade, like, I do believe Arcetes right now is a more talented player, you know, like gun skill-wise, but having Crim in a similar role where he's not the kills and just has to be extremely well positioned and play their life and play objective, I think that would be perfect for Crim, because his leadership and comms on top of that is so superior to most players.
I agree. Like, I think Crim might be a more complete player, certainly in terms of the history, and especially when FaZe had these issues in Modern Warfare where they were choking all these grand finals and stuff like that. Like, that's something that Crim doesn't really do. And he also seems to have the mental edge on a lot of players. So I would love to see how that would go. Like, I just wonder, because Crimsix kind of on his own on Dallas last year with a lot of talent just couldn't get the pieces working as he wanted them to. And I think probably, I mean, but you know, the FaZe have got Crowder, right? So in theory, Crim on FaZe with Crowder as coach, like, I'm sure they could get a good dynamic going there. I mean, that would be disgusting on paper, because that's the thing, they don't need, this is the great thing about Crim on FaZe, actually, the way you're describing it, is that Arcetes, if anything, is too talented to be in that role, in that, like, he doesn't have any kills to get, you know, like, everyone else is getting the kills, he just has to do what he needs to do, because Simp, abezy and Selim are going to get all the kills. Crim is kind of the perfect guy because he's not, he's not going to put up crazy numbers. Like, he hasn't done that the last couple of years. But that's why he's perfect for this role, right? Because the numbers aren't going to be put up by him anyways. He can just do exactly what needs to be done, be the leader, be the communicator. And, you could argue that RC's talent, like, he could be dropping 1.2s on another team, but he doesn't get the chance to do it because he's winning everything. So he's not complaining, but,
Yeah. And you look at Crim's Search and Destroy, he had the best first blood percentage, like, out of anyone. I think on land he was something like 28 and 5 or some crazy stat in first bloods. Hold on. But like
it's something like that, yeah. 28 and 8, 20.
His intangible stats, his like random stats are still so dominant. This is gonna take a minute. But yeah, just continue while I find this actually.
Yeah, no, that's all good. I think that's I think it might be bang on the money. I don't think we're going to see that, but you never know, right? Because things change quick in Call of Duty, and I know that Crim, like, he's he's been poking some shots at selling from time to time. Like, him and abezy go back and forth on occasion. They've had their battles for sure. And look, I mean, the chemistry on FaZe is just so good that it's tough to ever see that team splitting apart. But it's not out of the question, right? Because this season, who knows what happens? I mean, FaZe have been looking really good in scrims early on, but maybe not. They haven't been looking dominant. Obviously, scrims don't mean that much. So, but it's can't look at any other metrics because there's no 2Ks or anything to watch anyway. FaZe are going to be good this year, but if they're not dominant this year, if they only win like one tournament or something, like, it only takes, because they're at the absolute pinnacle of where they can be, and that, the champs curse is a thing, right? Which we always talk about in cards, that a team that wins champs, inevitably something goes wrong with them. I mean, it's happened pretty much every single year, with very few exceptions, maybe like one exception or something. But pretty much every single time.
One exception.
I guess Envy, right?
One. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's literally one exception. Yeah, every other team has collapsed in the next year. So that's the thing. If FaZe, that's the thing. When you're at the peak, and then maybe you're not at the peak anymore, friction is going to develop much more quickly than it would do if you hadn't had success. It's kind of like the gunless problem that you could argue that some teams have had, where a lot of gunless teams that have collapsed, exception of this year on Seattle, but this follows the rule that I'm going to demonstrate, is that every single year that gunless teams have collapsed, he won an event in February or March, the team then fell off, and then the team just blew apart because my perspective is that Gunless loves winning. He wins in February or March. Like, we're talking Infinite Warfare, we're talking World War II, then Black Ops 4 happened every single year. And then a couple of months after that, the team gets worse. And then the friction just completely takes over the team and everything collapses because they're not winning anymore. Seattle last year, they didn't win, therefore, you could argue therefore they didn't collapse. I think that Gunless has also matured beyond where he was a few years ago, but it's just a trend that can happen when you're at the top and things don't go so well, things can change. So I'm just setting a scene where it might be possible that Crim joins FaZe. I don't think it's likely, but, give it a year. Maybe we're talking about a different story.
It's never happening, but I would love for it to happen.